Step into the unknown with the shadow frequency and your host, Matt Wilson, as he takes you where the shadows hum.
Okay, let's see what the cabinet's coughing up tonight. Oh, what's this? A brittle old newspaper clipping, yellowed, edges burned like it survived a fire. Headline says, "Mind Pictures Baffle Chicago Scientists."
That's not your everyday crossword puzzle section.
No, it's dated from the early 1960s, but it's talking about something older. A man named Ted Serios claiming he could burn images straight from his mind onto film. They called them thoughtographs.
Ted Serios, the troubled bellhop who turned his inner visions into photographs that baffled skeptics and believers alike. But you said the clipping is from the 60s. How does the 30s come into play?
According to this little side column here, researchers found similar imagery hidden in reels and photos decades before Ted came onto the scene, suggesting maybe he wasn't the first?
Tonight, listeners, we're winding the reels back to the shadows of the 1930s, where photography and the paranormal collided in strange flickering snapshots. Was Ted Serios an original psychic pioneer or just the inheritor of a much older, haunted tradition? Let's dive in.
The air grows thick tonight, listeners, as we step into the flickering shadows of a Chicago hotel in the 1960s. A man named Ted Serios, a bellhop with a troubled soul, claimed he could burn images from his mind on the Polaroid film, pictures conjured from pure thought. No camera trickery involved. They called it thoughtography, a word that hums with eerie possibility. What secrets did his mind project onto those ghostly frames? And what darkness lingered behind the lens? Buckle up, because tonight we're diving into a taste that blurs the line between real and the impossible. Matt, you ready to peer into this strange abyss?
Oh, Juniper, you've got me hooked already. A bellhop beaming his brain onto film? That's the kind of weird that keeps me up at night. Let's crack this case wide open.
Thought you'd say that. Take it away, Matt. Let's see what shadows you uncover.
Thanks, Juniper, for digging into the file cabinet and pulling out this peculiar gem. Tonight, we're opening a dusty dossier labeled Ted Serios, a name that sent shivers through the paranormal world in the 1960s. So settle into the dark, listeners, and let's step into the haze of a Chicago hotel, where a man with a restless mind claimed to wield a power that defied reality itself. Picture this. It's the early 1960s, and Theodore Judd Serios, a chain-smoking, hard-drinking bellhop, is working the night shift at the Chicago Conrad Hilton Hotel. Ted's not your average guy. Born in 1918, he's a rough-around-the-edges character, a man with little formal education and a rap sheet of minor arrests. But something about Ted is different. Around 1960, he starts dabbling in hypnosis with a co-worker, George Johann, chasing visions of lost treasures sunken beneath the sea. It's during these hypnotic trances that Ted discovers something extraordinary. He can project images from his mind onto photographic film. He calls them thoughtographs, snapshots of his psyche, burned onto Polaroid film without ever touching the camera's shutter. Now, this isn't some quiet meditative process. Ted's thoughtography is a spectacle, a chaotic ritual that feels like it's torn from the pages of a horror novel. He'd grip a small tube, what he called his gizmo, and press it to his forehead, his face contorting, veins bulging, eyes bloodshot as he entered a trance-like state. He'd shout, curse, sometimes wail, his body trembling as if possessed by some unseen force. Then at the peak of this frenzy, he'd yell, "Now!" and someone else would snap the Polaroid. When the film developed, it wasn't always clear. Sometimes just black voids or blinding white whiteys. But every so often, something emerged. Blurry, dreamlike images of buildings, cars, even aircraft, as if Ted's mind had ripped a piece of reality and pressed it onto the film. One chilling example. In 1965, a thoughtograph showed a building that researchers later identified as a hangar belonging to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police's Air Division. Ted had never been there, had no way of knowing it existed. Another time, he produced an image of a barn owned by Dr. Jewel Eisenbud, a Denver psychiatrist who became Ted's biggest advocate. But here's the kicker. The barn in Ted's thoughtograph wasn't the barn as it stood in the 1960s. It was the barn from decades earlier, missing modern additions, as if Ted's mind had reached back through time itself. Eisenbud, a respected professor at the University of Colorado, spent years studying Ted. From 1964 to 1966, conducting hundreds of experiments under strict conditions. He brought in scientists, photographers, even conjurers to rule out trickery. Ted would stand far from the camera, sometimes in a Faraday cage wearing clothes provided by the researchers to prevent hidden devices. And still the images appeared. Fuzzy, otherworldly, but undeniable. Eisenbud called them proof of the unconscious mind's power, a glimpse into a realm where thought could bend reality. Over 400 Polaroids piled up in his collection, each one a haunting question mark. What was happening in those hotel rooms under the dim glow of a single bulb? Was Ted tapping into some cosmic frequency? Channeling visions from places he'd never been? Or was his mind a haunted projector, pulling images from a shadowy well deep within? The more you think about it, the colder the air feels. Those Polaroids, smudged, warped, like memories from a dream you can't shake, still sit in the archives at the University of Maryland, waiting for someone to decode their secrets. It's like Ted was a human camera, capturing shadows from some other plane. Makes you wonder, what else could his mind have seen if he'd kept going? Juniper, you feeling the chill yet?
Oh, I'm feeling it, Matt. Those blurry images are creeping me out. Like they're staring back from the void. What's next?
Hold tight, Juniper. Let's take a quick break and then we'll dive deeper into Ted's strange world.
Wow, listeners, Ted Serios and his thougtographs are giving me goosebumps. Can you imagine staring at a Polaroid and seeing a building you've never visited conjured straight from someone's mind? I'm dying to know what you're thinking. Send us a note at shadowfrequencypodcast.com. After the break, Matt's got more on this eerie tale, so don't touch that dial. Right now, and here's Chris Beach with a quick word.
Thanks, Juniper. And hey, don't forget, if you're enjoying the show, give us a like and subscribe. You can follow the Shadow Frequency on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and of course, all the major podcast directories. Want more? Head over to shadowfrequencypodcast.com, where you'll find every episode, our brand new Shadow blog with companion articles, and our merch store with some eerie cool swag. Plus, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a voicemail right on the site and let us know where you're listening from. We might feature your message in an upcoming episode. And if you'd like to support the show, you can even buy us a coffee. Every bit helps keep the shadows whispering. Back to you, Juniper.
Thanks, Chris. All right, let's crank up the spectral cosmic message materializer, spinning the dials now. And look, a strange note's flickering through the static. All right, it's time to crack it open here. See what our listener has to say. All right, this one says, "Hi, Matt and Juniper. I've been binging on the Shadow Frequency on my late night drives home from work, and I have to say, your mix of spooky stories and humor keeps me wide awake. That last episode gave me chills, and I actually pulled over when I thought I saw something dart across the road. Maybe just a deer, but who knows? Keep doing what you do. You've got a loyal fan here in the shadows. And that comes from Carla M. in Wyoming. Well, thanks, Carla. We appreciate that email. And if you have some thoughts, you can email us at shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. All right, back to you for the second half of this mind-bending mystery.
Welcome back, listeners, to the unsettling world of Ted Serios and his Thoughtography. We left off with those eerie Polaroids, images of places Ted shouldn't have known, conjured from his mind in a drunken, frenzied state. Let's dive deeper into this paranormal puzzle and see what else lurks in the shadows of Ted's story. Dr. Jewel Eisenbud, the psychiatrist who championed Ted, was convinced these thoughtographs were a window into the human psyche's untapped power. He ran experiments with an almost obsessive rigor, inviting experts from psychiatry, physics, and photography to witness Ted's sessions. In one test, Eisenbud would hand Ted a sealed envelope containing a random image, say, a picture of a medieval town or an ancient Olmec ruin. Ted, with no prior knowledge, would clutch his gizmo, scream, and produce a Polaroid that bore an uncanny resemblance to the target. One session in 1964 saw Ted create an image that matched a Roman church down to its arched facade, despite Ted never having set foot in Italy. But it wasn't just the images themselves that sent chills down spines. It was how they appeared. Ted's process was like a seance gone wild. His body would shake, his face would flush, and he'd down beer or whiskey like it was fuel for his psychic engine. Some photographs showed impossible perspectives, like aerial views of buildings Ted couldn't have seen, or structures that didn't exist in the present day. Eisenbud speculated that Ted's mind might be tapping into a collective unconscious, pulling fragments of time and place from some cosmic archive. Imagine that, a bellhop from Chicago, peering into the past or across continents, his thoughts bleeding onto film like ink from a ghost pen. Now, let's pause for a moment of cold hard reason. Skeptics, and there were plenty, had their own take on Ted's abilities. In 1967, two photographers, Charlie Reynolds and David Eisendrath, spent a weekend with Ted and Eisenbud. They claimed to catch Ted slipping something into his gizmo, a tiny piece of photographic transparency, they said, that could project an image onto the film. They argued it was a simple magician's trick, not a paranormal feat. James Randi, the famous skeptic, even recreated similar images using a small lens hidden in a tube, suggesting Ted was just a clever con man. But here's where it gets murky again. Eisenbud's experiments often had Ted standing far from the camera, sometimes in a shielded cage, with no access to the film. And what about those images that match places Ted couldn't possibly know? Even if you buy the skeptic's angle, it doesn't explain everything. Were some of Ted's thoughtograph tricks? Maybe. But the sheer volume, hundreds of Polaroids, many produced under tight controls, leaves a nagging question. What if something else was at play? Something beyond our understanding. By 1967, Ted's powers seemed to fade. His thoughtograph stopped coming, and he slipped into obscurity, living quietly in Quincy, Illinois, until his death in 2006. Some say the alcohol and strain burned out his gift. Others wonder if he was ever truly in control. Those Polaroids, though, remain locked in the Alban O. Kuhn Library at the University of Maryland, silent witness to a mystery that refuses to resolve. Were they a glimpse into the mind's hidden depths, or just a fleeting illusion? Either way, the thought of Ted staring into that lens, his mind screaming images into existence, makes the shadows feel a little closer tonight. So, listeners, what do you think? Was Ted Serios a psychic projector or a master of misdirection? One thing's sure, Those Polaroids still haunt the archives, daring us to look closer. Juniper, you buying this?
I'm torn, Matt. Part of me wants to believe Ted was channeling something wild, but that skeptic's voice is whispering in my ear. Creepy either way. What's your final take?
I'm leaving it in the shadows, Juniper. Let's wrap this one up.
Well, listeners, that was a wild ride through the mind of Ted Serios and his haunted Polaroids, from blurry buildings to impossible barns. This case leaves us wondering what secrets our own minds might hold. Thanks for joining us on the Shadow Frequency for episode 191. If you want to share your thoughts or a creepy tale of your own, you can email us at shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. Plus, you can find everything about the Shadow Frequency at shadowfrequencypodcast.com. We're always hunting for the next strange case, and we love to hear from you. Matt, you want to say goodnight?
Night, listeners. Keep an eye on the shadows and maybe your camera, too.
See you next time for another dive into the shadows. Stay curious, stay spooky, and we'll catch you in the static. Good night.
This episode was produced with a commitment to exploring the unexplained while grounding our discussion in documented discoveries. All interpretations are speculative and intended for entertainment purposes.